Bob Pinheiro, I got a question for you. Where were you born?
In California, a little town called Stevenson in Merced County.
Wow. And so from Stevenson, you went to high school where?
Livingston High School, graduated in 1956.
Wow, okay.
Went on from there to Ogden's Radio School in Burbank.
So let's back up here. So you get out of high school, and then you got this bug in your ear to go to radio. You want to be in radio.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked to your parents about going to Ogden?
No, although they provided the money to go there.
Yeah.
I was just a kid out of high school.
Sure.
Didn't really know much.
How did you find out about Ogden's?
I found out about Ogden's, I don't remember how I found about. I know that I went first from my home in Livingston, where I was living with my parents, and went to San Francisco to a radio school up there. And after the first day of that school, I said, this is not for me. Big old electronic book
Wow.
that they gave you to start with. So then, from there, I decided I was going to go to Ogden's. I called him up on the phone, and he said, well, we had a class that just started a week ago. I said, well, can I get into that one? He said, well, ordinarily we don't let anybody get into school unless they have to start the class. And so I said, well, I can catch up, I'll work harder.
There you go.
He said, okay, so that means the class was underway, and that's how I got my ticket.
So it took you 6 or 7 weeks to get your ticket?
6 weeks. I managed to get a job myself on my own.
Wow.
And my first job was in Sonora at the then KROG.
Yes.
KROG. You'll have to edit that part out.
Well, it was fun.
The thing I remember about KROG, it was the only station in town set up on a little hill just outside the downtown area. And the conductivity of the grounding system was very poor because it was very dry. So they had to run a garden hose out to the base of the tower and keep it wet so that we could cover the town with a signal. And we did.
So they let you talk on the radio as long as you kept the ground well watered.
That's the way it turned out. No, that was fun. And then from there I went to KYLS in Merced.
Each time, was it as a disc jockey?
Yeah.
All right.
And then while I was there, I was working, of course, the day shift, because like with so many stations in those days, they were all directional at night, drop power and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so the boss came to me one day and he said, look, I got too many guys with just third phones, third class phones.
Sure.
And I need some first class phones so they can cover the night shift. And he said, he told me if you get your license, I'll hold the job for you until you get back. And so I said, okay, otherwise you're going to have to let me go.
Yeah.
So I went to, that's when I went to Ogden's.
Okay.
And got my ticket.
Oh, so you'd been in radio a little while before you went down to get your first phone.
Right.
Yeah. That's a pretty common thing to do. There's a couple stations where you can work with a third, but then you want to be able to have no restrictions, so that's where a school like Ogden's comes in.
I had been, to answer to a prior question, I had got interested in radio and listened a lot to KDRB. And as a matter of fact, one Sunday I decided to go up there and see if I could get into the station and look around and see what was going on. So I showed up there one Sunday not knowing anybody. And it was Cousin Andy was working that shift. And he was late as usual. Station came on air at 5 o'clock in the morning. And usually he wasn't there until about 6. Anyway, I followed him into the back room where the transmitter was, and the control rooms. I just played around with the equipment and he let me do it. He didn't kick me out of the blade. And that's how I got started.
Wow. So that was really early on that Sunday morning. You were there like at 5 a.m.?
Well, I had to drive from Livingston, so yeah, it was something like 5 a.m., maybe 4:30 or something like that.
That is a great story.
And worked with the old Andy, cousin Andy. He was the nicest guy I ever wanted to meet, but boy, he was a mess.
Well, he was one of those great characters that just enriches our lives with great stories.
Yeah. That's how I got started with KTRB.
All right. How long did you work there?
I went there from 1961 to about 63. Maybe a little longer.
So at some point early in that era, you got to meet Bill Bates.
Yep.
And was that a pretty impressive meeting for you? Because he was a legend even then.
Yeah, he was. And Andy and Bill and Cal Proviance and a lot of the old timers. We had quite a crew there at that time.
Wow, I like that. Did Bill have any words of wisdom or advice for you?
Well, Bill was very instrumental in helping me get my ham license. Bill was a ham himself, W6 Charlie Fox, and very, very prominent on the ham radio bands. In fact, he had the only 1,000 watt transmitter installed in his Cadillac. In those days, they didn't make any compact idiots. Easy to use equipment. It was all homebrew with big tubes that glowed in the dark. And when he pushed the button to transmit, there was enough drain on the battery supply from the car that caused the lights to all dim. And more often than not, blew some fuses.
No doubt.
But Bill was very, very nice guy. He was quite an influence on me and whoever else that came his way.
I think he started a lot of radio careers, and he also was, unbeknownst to most of us, he was quite the engineer. He had been the chief engineer at KNX Los Angeles, and he also worked on Mexican ships, Navy ships, repairing their radio transmitters and things as part of his, I guess, World War II era, and maybe even before that, because he had I think a bad leg and he couldn't be in the military.
And polio.
Polio, that's what he had. So
he was placed on a board, keep it straight, and tied down for 6 months or so. And in addition to what you just mentioned about Bill, his last job before the radio station business was a repair shop that he opened in downtown Modesto at I believe it was the Covell Hotel building. And from there he entered into a verbal agreement with a man by the name of T.R. McTamaney. T.R. McTamaney was a local businessman, and he was pretty well off, had the bucks to really get the station going. And they ended up starting on a verbal agreement only, the station, and the first location was at the corner of Sylvan and Coffeewood.
I thought maybe Sylvan and McHenry.
McHenry, there you go. Sylvan and McHenry was the first location. It was an old house that they converted over. The antenna was a long wire strung between two poles, which in those days was the way they did cheaply. And it came on the air in June, I think it was the 18th of June, 1933, as I recall. And the rest is history. People used to listen to him on the air, had a very unique style, and people enjoyed listening to them.
Another question for you, Bob, is when you first got on the air, was any of the other announcers or any other announcer there to help you, to guide you, to give you some mentoring ideas?
No, they were pretty much with their own. They stayed together with themselves.
Mhm.
I didn't really have anybody come to me and offer to help me.
Mhm.
I played enough with the equipment that was very easy for me to take care of.
Uh-huh.
Didn't have any big problems with
Did you have a lot of live commercials?
it. Everything was live. We didn't have any means of recording stuff. Prior to the time I got there in the 60s, they were using electrical transcriptions, which were called ETs.
Sure.
And they were kind of on a lathe.
Mhm.
And then they progressed from there to tape. The radar tape that we were familiar with.
Sure.
And then from there we went, of course, in addition to the tape and all that stuff, we read the commercials live on the air.
Mhm.
And a bucket sitting in the control room with all the different clients. You pull the copy out, read it on the air, put it back in the bucket.
Sure. So the song, let's say you're playing songs, a record ends and you back announce that song and the name of the artist, and then you talk about the weather, etc. And then maybe you read 2 or 3 30, 60-second live commercials, right? You'd be on the air a long time before you were able to get to the next song.
Yeah, that's true. 60 seconds was not the norm. More like 30 seconds was the norm.
Uh-huh, yeah.
But
I'm glad.
It does.
60-second commercials kill you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.
Good. How long then did you stay at KTRB?
I stayed there from, I believe it was 1961. Could have been 1960. I'd been working at KNGS in Hanford. I came back from, let me back up on that. I came back from Ogden to KYOS,
Right.
and the manager, the owner of the station, said he would hold my job, and he did.
Mhm.
So I went to KYOS, and then this gentleman that owned the station sold it and left town, and the new owner just virtually cleaned house, which in those days was normal. And I went from KYOS to KNGS in Hanford.
Mhm.
I was there for about 2 years. That's when I got married. And we bought a home in Hanford. And then we went to Modesto and got a job at KTRB.
Mm.
And that's how that started.
So that was your drive to work every day from your home in Hanford to Modesto?
No. I moved to Modesto when I got the job
Okay.
at KTRB. So I was here when I think about 1961, somewhere in that area. And I got my license, my Bill Ogden's radio school license. And cut that part out. Working at KTRB was a lot of fun, especially the ham radio operation. We had Bill was so much into ham radio, Bill Bates. He had the engineer build a 1,000 watt ham radio transmitter and the associated equipment, which included a wave receiver, we had a Collins receiver, which was top of the line in those days, and we had that 1,000 watt transmitter in the attic of KTRB, where the chief engineer worked. And every morning, weekdays, we would come in, or we would, if you were working the morning shift, You had two operators, one in each of the two control rooms. And I'm letting it go for you.
That's fine. You did perfect.
Every morning, the morning engineer would sign the station on the air at 5 a.m. and we go off at midnight, sometimes 11 o'clock, depending on how good the business was.
So if you had commercials, you would stay on till midnight?
That's right.
Okay.
Some way to pay the bills. Of course, at sundown, in those days, we were directional at nighttime, and we dropped power from 10,000 watts to a kilowatt at sundown, and back up at 10,000 watts at sunup. And the morning announcer was covering the station with his first class phone requirement. He also was required to go into a little cubicle we had there at lost my chain of thought.
It's all right. just
So-
whenever you're ready, and he'll edit it.
Yeah, I know. I'm having fun with
No,
it.
that's okay.
So the chief engineer signed on at 5 a.m. Was he also an announcer?
No,
Was he also?
the announcer was signed on.
Oh, I thought the engineer did that.
No,
Bob-
the
Bob-
engineer didn't have a license.
Were you going to say that he went into that little cubicle and read the news? Is
Say
it,
again.
were you going to say he went into that little cubicle and read the news?
On the cubicle, we had a whole bank of old military receivers. There's only were the receivers. And the purpose of that room, with all those receivers, was to garner weather information via ham radio operators all up and down the west coast, up into Alaska. These all volunteer ham radio operators would get on a certain frequency, which was an 80 meter band. Every morning they would gather about between 6 and 7, and they would report their weather conditions. And we would pick that up, fill out a chart, the sheet for Bill, and then Bill came in at 8:30 or so. And he would take the weather information that we gathered, and he'd come on the air about 8:30 with a beer barrel polka. Man, how many times I played that thing. He'd come in, he was supposed to be on the air at 8 o'clock, but he never made it. He would be in the office taking care of business, and he'd get that all cleared away, and then he would go on the air, slide into the control room, and go on the air. And the beer barrel polka was it. Boy, when the people heard that, they knew Bill was coming. And we had to fill the time between the start of that and the time Bill got in the control room and took over. He ran his own controls. And the people would contact the station for various things. We had a lost and found department. Somebody lost a dog or a cat. And they would call the station, we'd put it on the air.
Sure.
And he did a lot of things like that. If somebody would call in and say that a family was burned out during the night, accidental fire or something, Bill would just say, if you want to donate, just send your money in, we'll give it to him. In addition, he would give him $1,000 or $2,000, whatever.
Yeah. He's quite a guy, wasn't he?
He was.
When you were on KTRB, it was so popular you must have been more or less famous.
No,
Did you have a lot of that notoriety in town? People would say, whoa, you're that guy?
no, no, I never considered that the way, it wasn't that way. I was just a young guy,
Uh-huh.
enamored by radio and having a fun time.